This is Heidi Giesbrecht of Encouragement Along the Journey. Welcome, everyone. I'm so glad to have you here this morning, and I'm glad to have Courtney here. We were just saying in the pre-show that this has seemingly become a regular thing without us actually planning for it to become a regular thing. But I think we've both found we love these conversations, and there's so much that always comes out of it that we both enjoy. And so, yeah, we're happy to be here with you. So my name is Heidi Giesbrecht. I write on Substack at Encouragement Along the Journey, as well as reflections on the sacred in the ordinary. I am a therapist in my paid work. I'm a mom of 4 young adults who are ADHD. I'm married to a partner who is also ADHD. All of this was discovered kind of later in life, in the preteens for my kids and in his 50s for my partner. And so I do write a lot about our journey, and I just write about life in general and questions that arise in the counseling office and in conversations with friends. So it feels very appropriate today that we are talking about what happens when life doesn't go to plan, because much of my writing lately has been around uncertainty and change and shift and just all of those lovely things that we as humans sometimes want to avoid. So, welcome, Courtney, and maybe tell us a bit about yourself.
Okay. Hello, everybody. I'm Courtney. I'm a registered massage therapist and the human behind Sacred Wave Wellness, where I help people learn the language of their own nervous systems so that we can all better understand ourselves and kind of better understand how, like, why we feel the way we do, respond, and kind of move through life the way we do. Because I believe that when we all understand ourselves more deeply, we have more choice in how we live. So we have like more capacity for things like connection, joy, and the things that make our lives all feel more meaningful. And that's ultimately kind of why I created Sacred Wave Wellness, because I don't want people to spend their lives fighting against themselves or just kind of getting through the days.
Yeah.
I want people to have the tools and awareness to participate as fully as possible and create these beautiful lives that I believe we are all meant to live. And I'm also very excited for this conversation because, yeah, I feel like it's so relevant because I mean, how many of us just want certainty, but uncertainty is a part of the human experience.
Yes. Well, I was sharing with Courtney earlier that I got up this morning, and some mornings you just feel like I got nothing. Like, I just got nothing today. And it was one of those days where I was like, oh, everything in my life has always gone to plan. And then I started thinking about, I mean, has it really? And it's like, well, no, I know it hasn't. But in that moment, I couldn't even put my finger on anything. And so I just started doing some processing around some of those questions. And so maybe I'll ask the very first one that I started processing, which is control. Like, what has happened when I've realized that I can't control the outcome? And I'm curious, like, Courtney, has your life always gone according to plan?
If only. Because yeah, as you were sharing that with me before we went live, I was like, wow, okay. I need some of that because I've honestly felt like my life has mostly not gone to plan,
Yeah.
which is just, yeah, kind of funny because I'm definitely one of these people that has always wanted like 1,000 guarantees before I do something. Like, I want to know that if I choose this path, it's going to work out, or if I do this thing, it's going to be the right decision, which is like, if only that's how it worked. Because obviously, yeah, like, you never really know what's going to happen, right? Like,
Yeah.
relationships change, careers change. You can have the best laid plans and then it doesn't go to plan. So I think,
Yeah.
and then also, like, on the flip side of that too, like, unexpected things can appear that we were never expecting that turn out better than we ever could have imagined too, right?
Yeah.
There's been honestly more than I could probably even list here from like, I did a massive kind of, I mean, I can't even say really career change because I wasn't in the career, but like my path was, I guess, kind of again, I think a lot of us get caught up in that, in the societal kind of things of you go to school, you get on the path to a certain career and you get in that career and uh, so I was kind of on that. Like I went to university, I had this plan of what I thought I wanted to do, and then I was miserable. And I again for a period of time got stuck in that like, okay, well, I've already like said that I was going to go this path, so I've just got to stick it out and I've just got to be miserable for these 4 years and get to the end. And then hopefully it'll be better once I actually get into this career,
Yeah.
which thank God I did not do
Yeah.
because, yeah, obviously things would have gone a completely different direction.
Yeah.
Because, yeah, I lasted like 2 years in that. And then I was like,
Wow.
no, this is not the way to go. Kind of left that, took 8 months off to kind of reevaluate my life, and then went to massage school. And then now I've kind of done all different bits within that. And I think that's kind of what I've learned. It's just like, not that I'm good at going with the flow, but I've been trying to more go with the flow, and like all of like even within Sacred Wave Wellness has just had all these different iterations because that's kind of what brought it into fruition is I had all of these different pieces that didn't necessarily fit into the context of massage therapy. And so I was like, okay, well, am I just collecting all these certificates and whatnot for nothing? And I'm just like, who knows what I'm going to do with these? And then I was like, no, like these are actually part of my passion and like what I feel like I'm called to do. And so I was like, okay, well, how am I going to do this? And that's kind of what brought it all together because then all of these things I can bring into one space and bring it into fruition.
It's interesting when you said call to do. I was like, it feels like there's something there because I know for me, like the work I've been doing recently around writing and even doing these live conversations, there's something in me that feels compelled to do it. Like I can't not do it. And I just keep like I have more ideas than I can actually pursue. And when I stop to think about it, the things that are actually compelling and moving me forward, I think actually come out of the greatest moments of discomfort and the greatest moments of things not turning out the way I thought they would. And so it's an interesting process of recognizing that like sometimes the things that are not planned or that don't go the way we think they're going to go often end up having some sort of benefit or blessing, even if they're not a great thing. Like it might not have been a good thing that happened, and yet something can grow out of it that can actually bring us something meaningful. But Anne said, not knowing is so uncomfortable. And I think, I find when I have been invited into these opportunities to participate in something that isn't going as I had planned it. I don't often love stepping into it willingly. I often feel like I get pulled into it kicking and screaming, like, I don't want this. This isn't the way it's supposed to be. Right. And yeah, it's I started like when this morning I sat down and I thought I'm going to start with my morning pages and I'm going to focus on some of these questions. And I only got through the first one, but maybe I'll quickly walk you all through kind of what I recognized around the control piece for myself. Like I said, my first thought was, I can't think of anything in my life that's gone, differently than I anticipated. And then I was like, well, wait a minute. There's actually been a lot. And like you, probably more that has gone differently than has actually gone the way I thought that it was going to go. And so when I started thinking about control, I thought, as a kid, I remember like not feeling like I had control of the whole world because I definitely grew up in a hierarchy, a community where adults had all the power and kids did not. And yet there was something, and I think it was probably part of what I was taught that like if I followed the rules, I had a lot of ability to control things because if I just followed the rules, then I wouldn't get punished and things would be fine. And so I was this incredible like rule follower. And I remember, thinking like in some areas I do have the power to have to bring about change. And I think about like grade one, there was a girl who sat next to me who I don't know why, but immediately from for some reason, she didn't necessarily seem to be responsive. And that didn't stop me. I remember like dropping candies on her desk every day. Like, I'm just going to win her over with kindness. And the funny thing is, she became one of my good friends and we're still friends now. And so, there's like this element of I do have control. Even grades, like I wanted to do really well in school. And so I would work really hard and I was always like top of the class. And yet these things happen early on that really challenged some of that and I didn't know what to do with it. And so one of the pieces I've written, if anyone is curious, is grade four voice. And it was about something that happened in grade four where I had done everything I was supposed to. I followed all the rules. I got the good grades and still I didn't get the acknowledgement that I thought came with it. And it started like this process of, oh, like maybe I'm not very smart. Like maybe I'm nice, but I'm really not very smart. And I just think I am, but I'm actually not. And so just recognizing like, wow, there are things that I can't control. And I think of, my brother when I was 16 years old was diagnosed with cancer. And again, thinking like, if we just pray really hard, like he's going to be healed of cancer. And, cancer can be such an up and down journey. And it was for us as well. And he fought valiantly for a couple of years and passed away when he was 29. And so again, this sense of, my gosh, like all the things that I thought I could do to control the situation didn't actually work. And so after a number of these kinds of things, at first it was confusion and kind of taking it on as about me. And I must have done something wrong. And then eventually it became anger. Like, this is so unfair. Like, how can I have to go through time after time after time after time of things being really, really hard? And I'm looking at others, and other people aren't dealing with these situations at the ages that I'm dealing with it. And the word that I wrote down was around emotions, because I think part for me of what I learned to do was just to validate the emotions that came up and acknowledge them and start to recognize that they were just indicators rather than drivers of my emotional car. And so the phrase that I thought of this morning was emotional passengers. Like, they're not the drivers of my emotional car, but they are my emotional passengers. And if I keep trying to kick them out of the car, it's actually not helping me. But if I just recognize that they're passengers, but I allow them to be passengers, not the drivers, that's where I start to have the ability to like ask that question of, okay, where do I go now? So that was kind of, as I was doing my writing this morning, like around control, that's some of the thoughts that came up for me. So
Yeah, well, because I think that's the interesting thing. Because, like Anne says there, it is like the illusion of control, right? Because, like you say, like there
yeah.
probably has been so many experiences that you've had that you have kind of, controlled the situation and it's worked out.
Yeah.
And so you're like, ooh, okay, well, there's the evidence. And I think that's an important point too, is like usually the looking for certainty, there's something with underneath of that feeling, right? Whether it is
Mhm.
like control, like we've just been talking about, or safety, like you just think,
Mm,
like, well, if I do this, then I'll finally be safe.
yeah.
Or like permission from other people. Like that was one I had a tendency to do a lot too. Was like, well, I'll just keep asking so many different people and they'll tell me if I'm on the right path or they'll tell me if I should
Ooh,
do this thing.
like external validation.
Yeah,
Yeah.
that was like my green light, shall we say, to then like go do the thing or whatever it
Yeah.
may be, right? And so I think that's been
Mm.
an interesting thing to dive into for me is like, what is underneath the feeling of certainty that I'm looking for?
Yeah.
Because I think that's what I'm always kind of like trying to dive into because there's so many like little bits and pieces that can be under there, because
Yeah.
also from a like nervous system perspective too, and just like a human perspective is like it is so human to want certainty. And like I think Anne again said it somewhere in there as well, is like it is so uncomfortable to sit with the uncertainty and the not knowing. And I think that's also like part of the practice that I've been doing too, is just like sitting with the discomfort. And like you say, like letting those things be there, whatever it may be. Cause again, like there could be so many things, whether it's, fear or grief, like letting those be there and letting that be okay. And
Yeah.
knowing, I think also that like your nervous system is trying to anticipate what's coming next. And that can often feel safer to your body, because it is such like an ingrained thing from a young age. And I think just like kind of that's part of the retraining process, is just teaching your body that you can still have that discomfort and sit with it. And that's not the only thing that can exist. Like you can still feel safe in your body and know that also
Mhm.
like you can show up for yourself and not abandon yourself in those moments as well.
Yeah.
Has been like really powerful for me.
Yeah. Well, Paul just wrote, poise is the ability to live with uncertainty and embrace it because precarious is part of our being. And I think, yeah, like the ability to live with uncertainty, I think you hit on something when you said, the question is what's underneath the certainty that I'm looking for? Because I think once we uncover some of that and we figure out, okay, what is it that I need? It actually allows us to move to this place where uncertainty no longer has to be something that we have to avoid or be scared of, but it can actually be something that we embrace, which when you say it, it feels like such a weird thing. And yet, I mean, I know in my own journey, I've come to this place where I've learned to be much more comfortable with uncertainty than I ever was when I felt like I needed certainty. Yeah.
Because I think it can come with this kind of, I don't know, like icky quality or like overdone, I guess, where people are always like, oh, you've just got to embrace it and you've got to accept it. And all these things are like, my favorite is like, well, just like let it go and just like
Yeah.
be in the flow. And like, again, this has been kind of a lifelong process for me, because I'm always like, okay, great. Like, how do you just let it go and embrace it? Because again,
Yeah.
like, it is so uncomfortable, right?
Yeah.
And so I think that's also like a thing to be aware of, I guess, is just
Yeah.
like, it's also a process. Like,
Yeah.
I don't think you can just also say to yourself, well, just, you can't just, as much as that would be great, like say this mantra over and over again and just be like,
Right.
I'm gonna just let it go and I'm gonna embrace the
Yeah.
uncertainty. Because I think like it takes a while too to embrace it and to learn
Yeah.
to like sit in the discomfort of the not knowing. It's not just, you're not just going to wake up one day and be like, okay,
Yeah.
I'm so fine with the uncertainty now.
Well, and I wonder if, like, as you were saying that, I thought, oh, I wonder if part of it is that we associate some things with that actually aren't necessarily meant to be married. And I think about like embrace or accept. Do we somehow make that feel like it's a good thing and it's wonderful and we should love every minute of it? Because I don't think that's a reality. Like, I have come to embrace uncertainty and appreciate what it brings me. That doesn't mean it's not uncomfortable. It still feels pretty darn uncomfortable. And there are still moments of fear where I step forward anyways. And so I wonder if sometimes we have a tendency to kind of go all or nothing with it. Like if we embrace and accept, then everything about it needs to feel positive and wonderful. Where the reality isn't, it's that emotional passenger. Like the reality is there might be parts of it that actually feel very freeing because I've experienced some of that where like when I let go of some of the certainties, there's actually some freedom that comes with like, I don't have to know it all. I don't have to do it perfectly. And even like I said to you this morning, I can come into this conversation not having prepared a speech, and that's okay. Like that's uncertainty right there. And there can be moments where that feels really tentative or like, okay, here we go. And I think about, when I went ziplining for the first time and just that, like, I so desperately wanted to do it, but I'm scared of heights. And so, like, just kind of like this, okay, I'm doing it anyway. Here I go. And it's like, lifting my feet and just letting my body go. And it ended up being amazing. But that uncertainty at the beginning was not fun. It was not pleasant. And so I wonder if sometimes we we hear words and we maybe attach meaning to them that isn't actually part of it. And so embracing and accepting to me is one of those. Embracing and accepting doesn't mean saying I love everything about this is good. And I think about like when my brother passed away, if I could go back and change that and have him still here with me, would I do that? 100% I would. I would change that in a heartbeat. Have I learned and grown as a human incredibly because of that experience? Absolutely. Do I value that learning? Do I appreciate it? Do I bring it into my relationships and my counseling practice? 100%. And so to me, that's always the yes and. Like it can have really wonderful, amazing, powerful things, and it can have really hard and difficult things. And so to me, embracing and accepting uncertainty has to include both of those. It can't be just one or the other because as soon as it is just one or the other, it becomes very flat and very, I don't know, minimizing, I think. Uh, some comments here. I'm going to read them out. So Paul says, the desire for comfort is what we need to explain. When you can chuckle at yourself, you are a sage until you believe you are a sage, and then you certainly are not. Love that. Anne says, seems like maybe a spectrum between being open to it versus accepting, welcoming, and embracing. Yeah. So recognizing again the both parts. Yeah.
Yeah, because again, I think it comes back to that like illusion of the control that we have, right?
Yeah.
I think that's just the thing is like, both good and bad kind of, or I shouldn't say bad, but like unexpected, like
Yeah.
unwanted things that are going to happen that you wouldn't necessarily want to happen.
Yeah.
But I think, yeah, we like trick ourselves into thinking that if we do all these things and we like the best laid plans and it's all going to go smoothly, but then like life is still going to life, right? And so I
Yeah.
think, yeah, like Anne's saying, like just being open to it because, yeah, so many of these like hard things or challenges are still going to come up. And I think it's just like, how are you going to like meet those moments, right?
Yeah.
Because I also think of like, I've been reflecting a lot about travel and like the person I am when I'm traveling. And I mean, I don't know if anyone else has this, but I definitely have the travel bug. And I always, it's like, it's been this weird thing of like, I always felt weird about it, felt like, why do I always feel like I used to be able to last like 2 years before I would get this like inner, I don't even know what to call it, like just this inner like thing popping up, being like, we need to go now, like get out of here. And then I always thought like, yeah, what is that coming from? And then like even
Mm.
when I get on the vacation, I always just feel like I'm more my myself. And I've kind of been reflecting on that too. And I've also was reflecting on the fact that 'cause this also popped up when I was thinking about this conversation too, is like I feel like I'm so much better about dealing with uncertainty on
Mm.
vacation. Like I'm so much better at just going with the flow and like trying things that like maybe I wouldn't try at home and just like yeah, and I'm not getting that same discomfort popping up or that same wanting to check in with somebody else to like make sure I'm going to do the right thing or like those kind of things. And it just kind of made me think, like, where is the difference between like me on vacation and
Yeah.
me like back in, real life?
Yeah.
And I think that's just such like an interesting thing that I still like, that's one that's like at the top of my journal that I'm still kind of mulling over, because
Yeah.
interesting thing that it's like, okay, you are bringing yourself wherever
Yeah.
you go, right? Like there isn't a difference between the me on vacation and the me when I'm back in my day-to-day living.
Yeah.
And so, yeah, it's kind of that like
Yeah.
interesting question of like, who am I there
Yeah.
and who am I here? And like, where is that difference?
Yeah. Well, and I think like what a great question. Like, what is it about being on vacation that allows me to interact with the world in a different way? And then to me, the follow-up question would be, how do I bring that back into my everyday so that even if I'm not on vacation, I'm still living from that place of fullness and yeah, like authenticity and being who I am. Yeah. I mean, definitely like pressures of life impact things. And I think that's one of the challenges is how do we live in the same fullness regardless of where we are? And that probably ties into the certainty piece too and the uncertainty, right? Like even in moments of great uncertainty, how do we still show up fully? And it was interesting as you were talking, I don't know what it was that you said, but I had this thought that like I wonder if the illusion of control sometimes keeps us from actually accessing possibilities. Because as long as I feel like I am in control. If I just do this, this will happen. I might miss opportunities that I wouldn't have chosen because I think about, I mean, so many of the things in my life that have not gone the way that I planned them. Like, I mean, some of the early losses in terms of deaths in my family, those were not things that I would have planned. And yet, who I am as a person has grown incredibly because of those experiences. Relationships that didn't work out, ending up with a partner who I always said, if it hadn't been for the relationships that didn't work out, I never would have ended up with Richard. He is not the kind of person I would have picked in high school as the person I would end up with. And yet, he is exactly who I needed. And so the beautiful partnership that we've grown over years wouldn't have happened if I hadn't had those experiences of things not turning out. And, then I think of my kids. We spent the first 3 years of being parents thinking that we made a horrible decision. We were not cut out to be parents and we shouldn't have had kids. But once you got them, like they're there, you have to deal with them. And then as we kind of progressed in our journey, recognizing, oh, there's actually some developmental challenges here that are part of why it's feeling so hard. And, at that point, again, in my mind, this isn't how I wanted it to be. And there have been many things along the way where our life just has not paralleled what a lot of people's lives with children looks like. And so there's been grief and loss and things that we've had to let go of. And yet, when I think about my kids now, they're all like 21 to 26, and they're amazing humans. And just a week ago, I had one of my Substack friends come stay with us, and it was really neat getting to see her perspective of my family and just recognizing, yeah, we have something really special. And we wouldn't have had that if it weren't for some of these unexpected things. And so, yeah, just recognizing that sometimes the illusion of control and the path that I think is going to be best and that I'm going to carve out and I'm going to make happen, it may keep me from seeing possibilities that could actually make life better in a way that I could never have anticipated. And it doesn't mean that every uncertainty is better, but it just means there's more possibility there than we sometimes give it credit for. Yeah.
Yeah, because I think sometimes that can give you these like blinders, right? Because you've like, I think that's why like I always hear this thing of like, because also I don't like the idea of like not planning either because I'm definitely a planner.
Me too.
So I am trying to be more open and go with the flow because I think there is like some aspects to that too. But I think that's maybe like the balance is like, okay, you can have a plan or you can have the goals and the dreams so that you have like the vision of where you're headed to,
Yes.
but then also leaving yourself open for all those other, yeah, like uncertainties or synchronicities and all those other things that might pop up that if you're just like tunnel vision, like, no, I'm going this direction, you might not necessarily see. And those could lead you to like a more aligned path for you,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
So I think that's what I've been like reflecting on a lot more too is just like, okay, yeah, don't just scrap the your plan, but like leave yourself open to those things. Cause I can also, yeah, give so many examples of how that has happened for me too. 'Cause I mean, even through this whole journey, like I never in a million years thought that I would even be on Substack. I definitely never thought that I would be doing lives because I do not love speaking on video. But again, that's kind of like leading me more to my aligned path because I more
Yeah.
want to be like leading people and speaking in front of groups and stuff. And so it's like, okay, I never would have necessarily like chose this as part of my path, but it just kind of like weirdly happened. And then there's been all these other things that have happened as a result of that have kind of led me here. And then I'm doing this. And then also all the connections and stuff, like even with Heidi, like doing these lives. And then, yeah, as you say, we just kind of naturally have continued to do them, which is just like so fun. And then,
Yeah.
even though I get super nervous for every single one of these, I don't know, there's something like psychologically that happens as soon as I know I'm being recorded that I'm just like, oh, I kind of have this moment of, why am I doing this to myself?
Uncertainty.
And it's like, okay, you know, feeling it, sitting in the discomfort, sitting in the discomfort of the nervousness. But I think it's also for me that like trust piece too, which I've
Mm.
had like a interesting relationship with over
Yeah.
the years. I've really been trying to unpack that because I've always just been like, every time somebody says it, I'm like, okay, how do you just trust? You know,
Mm-hmm.
trust
Mm-hmm.
the uncertainty, trust these
Yeah.
things that like pop down into your mind and you're just supposed to trust them and go with it. And I've always been like, okay, yeah, I don't, and I think what I've come to the conclusion of is like certainty is like you feeling like you need to know what's going to happen. But I think trust, from what I've kind of unpacked, is like I don't need to know what's going to happen. I just believe that I can handle whatever comes.
Yes.
And so I think that's been like a big shifter for me because, yeah, I've struggled to trust over the years. Be like, okay, like, how are you just going to do this?
Yeah.
I think, yeah, I don't know. I don't know if that's making sense, but just
It
like,
is.
yeah,
Yeah, no, it very much is. And I think about like when you said trust, I'm like, oh, I wonder if that's another one of those words, kind of like embrace, that we have some definitions that we attach to it that are actually not accurate. Like, do we, when we think of trust, think, I feel totally okay and I'm going to step out and be fully confident? Like, that's trust? Because I don't actually think it is. I think trust is stepping forward even when there aren't guarantees and acknowledging that part of that may feel really uncertain. And again, I always think about like in the midst of uncertainty, there's always something that we can hold on to. And I think sometimes we hold on to the things that actually are not really sturdy, thinking that they're sturdy. And so one of those is like control. If I just, I control this, I manage this, then I will be fine. When maybe I don't have control. But like you said, that part of maybe trust is more about saying, you know what, whatever happens, I will get through this. And I know that's something that I use a lot because I'll think back to all the things in my past that I said I could never survive that. Like after my brother passed away, I was like, I can never do this again. Well, guess what? I got to do it again and again and again. And I survived every single time. It doesn't mean it was easy. It doesn't mean it didn't bring about a lot of emotions, but I got through it. And so that awareness that, if something happens that is out of my control, I might not love it, but I will get through it. And so for me, I agree with you on the trust piece. That part of it is that, like, what helps me keep moving forward without guarantees? Well, part of it is I'm going to figure it out. And I've, there have always been people around who will be there to support me. And it might not always be the people that I think it's going to be, but I will get through it somehow. And so trust is a lot less about feeling confident and feeling like everything is fine, and a lot more about just stepping into it and doing it anyways. Hi, Florence. I see her little greeting there. Yeah.
Yeah, because I think that can also keep you, or has a danger of keeping you stuck too. Because then when you're always looking for control, or even
Yeah.
like in the context of grief, right? Is like,
Right.
would anybody choose that? No. But also then like I always think like what's the alternative? Then you're just gonna like shut yourself down. You're not gonna
Yeah.
ever like love anyone again or get close to anyone just because you don't want that to happen.
Yeah.
And it's like, I mean, some people might choose that, but it's like, are you gonna, I don't know, at least for me, like, I don't want to go through my life just like never getting close to anyone, never loving
Yeah.
anyone because I don't want to feel grief as much as that's like horrible. And I would not
Yeah.
choose that. But I think that can keep you like closed off. And then
Yeah.
another context, like, keep you stuck. Like if I just said like, "Nope, I'm just gonna like keep doing what I'm doing career-wise. I don't wanna push myself to get on Substack and do these lives," right? I could have done that,
Yeah.
but is that going to lead me to the best life I can possibly live,
Yeah.
right? Because
Yeah.
again, that felt like this little like niggling thing in the back of my mind.
Yeah.
And so I think it's more about like listening to that voice. And yes, like
Yeah.
there have been many times where I'm like, what the heck is this? And like, "Oh, do I want to be doing that?" Like these
Yeah.
lives, for example.
Yeah.
And it's, yeah, you don't necessarily know where that's going to lead.
Yeah.
But I think it's just like, again, getting kind of used to that discomfort of not knowing where it's going to lead and
Yeah.
just letting that be okay and letting that sit there and
Yeah.
know that, like, yes, that can be under the surface, but you can still move forward with these things.
Mhm.
And then, like, that's, yeah, also not to say that you might wake up one day and then that's not in alignment anymore. And then you've got
Yeah.
to pivot. And I think sometimes you can also get caught up in like, okay, well, like, why did that drop down? And I felt like I needed to follow that. But
Yeah.
I think sometimes it's also easy to like say in the moment, but then
Yeah.
later on when you look back, like you say with the whole kids thing, is like,
Yeah.
yeah, in the moment you're thinking, oh boy, like what have we done?
Yeah.
But then, like, as you look back, you're like, "Okay, I realize, like, all these other things that were going on," or, like, I realized, like, I took this path, which didn't really lead where I thought it was gonna lead, but there was things on that path that led me to the direction that I'm on now.
Mhm.
And so I think it's like we always think that some of these things are, like, detours, and we think
Yes.
that if it isn't going perfectly to plan, that
Right.
must mean that it's going wrong.
Yeah.
I don't think that that's necessarily the case. Yeah, there's so many like different examples that I'm sure we can all think of that haven't been on the path that we thought,
Yeah.
but then they kind of led us in some interesting directions.
Yeah. Well, it's interesting because two things came to mind for me, just some personal stories that I'll share. One was around, so Rich and I got married like months later, 4 months later. I was in school doing my master's and working full time and doing my master's, and eventually working part time and doing my master's. And then I had to do 1 year of residency where I needed to not be working. And so we went through this intense season of like, we gave up vehicles so that we could afford to send me to school. We cut back on everything. We didn't go out. Our life was so compressed time wise. Like we sacrificed a lot for me to go to school. And then I graduated and I started working, and I worked for less than 2 years and I totally burnt out. And we were dealing with, it was around the time that my dad passed away, and we were struggling with infertility, and there was just so much going on. And I, I took a leave from work and just never went back. And I remember at the time he was like, but we just like put all of this investment into getting you through school, and now you're not going to do what you were trained to do. And I remember saying to him, well, I feel like what I do is just part of who I am. And so I bring that into all of my life. I bring that into, my partnership with you. I bring that into my friendships. I was working at a credit union at the time. I bring that into my work with my coworkers and with our clientele that comes in. And I, I bring it everywhere I go. And so to me, it didn't feel like it was something I had let go of and something that I had chosen. And I think that has been a really helpful perspective for me in life in general, is just recognizing that it doesn't have to feel like something is being like cut out in order for something else to be there. But the fact that all of it is like part of the same fabric, it's just different fibers. And that was like point in our relationship where I think I brought something to the table. But the other thing that came to mind was just in the unexpected and the uncertainty and things not turning out the way that I thought they would in our family, the incredible gift that that brought me. So, here I was able to bring a gift to Rich to show him kind of a different way of incorporating learning and growing and bringing things to the table. But when it came to communication, having a partner who's on the spectrum and you don't realize it, and then later on, you have these kids who seem very much like their father. I had to learn a whole new way of interacting that really challenged me. Like it broke all the rules that I had learned as a child about how you communicate and how you follow the rules and how you discuss things. And, things like if you mean something, you've got to just say it. You can't imply it and believe that people are going to understand. Like people aren't mind readers. That was like mind blowing to me. Like, what? What do you mean you can't read my mind? Of course you should be able to. I gave you all these hints. And he's like, didn't see them. Sorry. And just the joy and freedom that has come out of, we always say like our family is like what you see is what you get. It is very open. You come in and immediately like there's nothing hidden. Everything is seen and visible. Communication is clear and direct, and it has been lovely in ways that I could never have anticipated. And so thinking about like some of those key things in my life where things absolutely did not go as planned. And some of my richest learning has come out of those possibilities.
Yeah, which I think like that's an interesting point too, is like as you were speaking, I was just thinking like a word that was popping into my mind was like growth. Because I think like so many of these things, and again, I don't want to like breeze past that, like, yeah, some of these things are also like challenges that maybe you wouldn't have chosen. And you're sometimes like, okay, like, did I really need to learn that lesson? Like, did I need another one? But I think it's like, okay, I guess it's like, again, that like, how are you going to meet the moment, right?
Mm.
Because I mean, yeah, again, I think so many things that all of us could pinpoint and be like, okay, yeah, like I didn't want that thing, but it's like, how are you going to show up in those moments? Like, are you just going to be, like nasty and argumentative and like, in your example, like, are you just going to be like, oh, like, why isn't this person just reading my mind? Why aren't they just like showing
If
up
you loved me, yes.
and like all those things? And I think just, yeah, and I guess it's about like learning and growing and like obviously you're not going to be perfect in those scenarios either. And because who is? You're going to mess up and you're going to not say the perfect thing or do the perfect thing. But I think it's like, okay, how are you going to like learn from those moments and like move forward from those moments too? And I think just like growing too from those moments that, yeah, you might not necessarily have chosen those things, but taking those bits and pieces from those situations and taking out those kind of growth moments and those little like glimmers.
Yeah.
Because I think it is so easy to get caught up when things are difficult or those things that you're kind of like, one of those like I always call them kind of like shouting at the universe moments of like,
Mm.
why? Why did I need another lesson? Why
Yeah.
did I need this?
Yeah.
Uh, of like taking, even if you have to literally search for them, you have to do a deep dive into like, okay, like what are these little bits that I can take out of this situation that are those little glimmers of bits that I can either like learn from or also like, yeah, there's been so many things that have, yeah, been challenges or, yeah, I've had like, relationship breakdowns that you think like are your person and then no, just kidding. And but it's like, what are those little things that you can like take away with you? And I've even seen like through various, yeah, like relationship breakdowns, friendship breakdowns that have also like shaped me as a person or like shaped my path in a way that I couldn't see at the time when you are just like shouting at the universe, like, what the heck? Another one. Cause yeah, sometimes life is also just throwing you many things at the same time. And you're like, like,
Yeah.
what the heck is going on here? And so I think like that is definitely one thing that's helped me is like doing my practices and also like really sitting down with it and being like, okay, like what are the lessons here? What can I take away? And also just like many, many times of having to also not necessarily get those lessons right away either and having to sit with that discomfort.
Mm.
And even as we are having this conversation, that's why I was kind of excited to have this conversation because again, I find some of these things are just so like right where I am in the moment. And you're like, "Oh,
Yes.
yeah, of just like, yeah, so many things even right now are like uncertain and I've been
Yeah.
really having and like there has been times where I like get away from my own practices and like what I'm actually like trying to help people with and you kind of
Yeah.
get away from it. And I definitely notice a difference there too, because then you get kind of like bogged down
Yeah.
with what I find and then you're just like slogging through my days.
Yeah.
And so, yeah, I think just like bringing myself back to those practices and even
Yeah.
just, yeah, like a big one for me has been like sitting with that discomfort and like meditation for me and breath work.
Mm.
I like love. Those are my consistent practices
Yeah.
of just like I might not necessarily have the answers or know where the heck I'm going here, but like I'm just gonna sit in this and like marinate in it
Yeah.
and like be okay with that. And I think just also like shifting your nervous system and retraining it to 'cause again, life is also gonna throw it like always throw us these things and you're gonna have the discomfort. So I think it's like training yourself to like sit with that and like let
Yeah.
it be there and like do whatever practices work for you to like be in that and let it be okay. But
Yeah.
also you're giving yourself that calm and safety because I have a tendency to like get in my head and want to figure it out and try and
Mhm.
plan and make the lists and
Mhm.
things, and I just try and like mentally figure it out. But like a big shift for me has been like getting out of my head, getting back into my body and like feeling what's actually going on. And
Mhm.
again, like we said earlier, like feeling like what is that feeling underneath the uncertainty that I'm trying to get out of, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
Usually trying to want to like get rid of it, like get out of the uncertainty, figure it out so we can escape it.
Yeah. Well, if anyone has practices that they use, feel free to drop it in the chat because I think that's such a great question. And as you were talking about kind of some of your practices of living with uncertainty and taking care of yourself in the midst of it. I think that's so important. And I jotted down a few notes as you were talking because I was like, oh, I don't want to lose them. I think for me, a big part for me has always been writing. I've always been when things get really, really difficult in my life, I journal. That is my thing. And I will journal like pages and pages and pages of just like blah, everything out on the page. And often when I go back and look at it, I'm like, oh, like now I understand where all this is coming from. Like now it makes sense. And I think, for me, another part of it is around the acknowledging the emotions. And a client gave me this beautiful visual and said I could use it and share it with people. And she talked about imagining her emotions sitting around in a circle like a group therapy session. And it, the goal of having a group therapy session is that everyone gets time to speak. And so giving permission to all the different parts of her experience to be able to speak. And I thought, oh, that's so beautiful because it is about acknowledging the many different emotions. And it's interesting when you say like, yeah, I'm living with uncertainty right now. I'm like, yeah, I mean, we probably all are. And I mean, on a world level for sure, but on a personal level as well. And I think, I don't know if it's current, I guess it's current in my mind is my kids are like 21 to 26, so still young, lots of life ahead of them. One of the things that I've been, getting in conversations with them is that there may not be any grandkids coming. And I know that that's like, it's down the road. Who knows? Things could change. But that one was an interesting one for me to sit with because in my mind, there was like this, again, the way that I had planned my life would be. And my plan was definitely that at some point in my life, I would be a grandparent. Even spending time thinking about what would I want to be called as a grandparent. And I mean, I've saved like all the little people and the Playmobil and the Thomas the Tank Engine, like all of our favorite toys, because someday I'm going to be fun grandma with all the awesome toys that the kids used to play with. And so having this recognition of, oh, wow, this may not actually go as planned. My first thought was like a bit of a sinking feeling of, oh gosh, yet another thing that I have to grieve, yet another thing where everything that other people are going through, I'm not getting to experience. And so there was acknowledgement of that and like, okay, it makes sense. Like, yes, I've had these dreams and visions of what life would be like, and it may not look like that. But then I kind of looked at the other side and thought, like if I don't have grandkids, there's also some freedom that comes with that because I see my friends and my brother and people who do have grandkids and how much their life changes. And in some ways, they're tied down a lot more than they used to be. And it's a beautiful tied down, but it shifts their life. And so just, again, allowing myself to hold with very open hands the possibilities. Like if I have grandkids, there are going to be some wonderful things that come out of that. There are also going to be some hard things that come out of that. And if I don't have grandkids, there are going to be some wonderful possibilities that come out of that. And there are going to be some really hard things that come out of that. And I, I think that part of just, yeah, sitting in the uncertainty requires us to acknowledge all the different parts of them and not to minimize any of them and not to allow them to take the steering wheel and control where my car is headed. And so for me, that was kind of the very practical, like, this is what I'm in the middle of right now kind of moment that came out of what you were saying.
Yeah, and that's actually so funny that you said that because I was also just reading what Karen said too, that she can relate to what you're saying. I'm gonna talk about it from the opposite perspective because I actually had a conversation with my mom about this because I don't even remember what sparked this, but I was having this guilt around the fact that I have no clue if I'm going to have kids. And because I've always been on the fence and I always thought like, okay, well maybe I'm just not going to have kids, but I was having this weird guilt like for my mom being like, well then she's not going to have grandkids. Even though like I also have two step siblings too, so I'm
Yeah.
like, well they could have grandkids, but I was just having this weird guilt. And I was also reading like the second thing that Karen said too, because she says, yeah, like my son and I had a conversation and he was worried about me. He said
Mhm.
he's sorry because he knows I'd be a great grandma. Yeah,
Yeah.
I had this like guilt. And then like me and my mom are usually really good about having these like deep conversations. And so I like had this whole conversation with her being like, I don't know if I'm gonna like have kids. Like, what if I don't have kids? And like, and she was like, it's fine. She was like, oh, I like thought that I would have them, but if I don't, like, it's not my choice. Like, it's your life.
Right. Exactly.
Like, where is this like weird guilt? Because again, I think it's
Yeah.
like one of those things that is maybe like one of those kind of societal things too of like, you, yeah, get married, you have the kids.
Yeah.
And obviously that means that, yeah, your parents are going to have grandkids. And
Yeah.
so I think it's like, yeah, one of those things that got ingrained that like I should be having kids.
Yeah.
And it never occurred to me, well, what if I don't have kids?
Yeah.
So then I was having this weird guilt for like
Right.
not even, yeah, like for myself, but like for somebody else not
Yeah.
potentially getting what I had never even had the conversation if she thought that she was going to want
Yeah.
them. And so it was just this like whole epiphany that I was like,
Yeah.
wow, where is this even coming from, you know?
Yeah. Oh, so it's so interesting. So Rich and I are part of a faith community. And one of the things that they do every summer is they put together this beautiful journal. And the journal often will have writing and contributions from various people. And so one of the things they asked us to do just this past week was to write a prayer for the grief of roads not taken. And so just as you were talking, I'm like, yeah, that's exactly what this is it's the grief of roads not taken because anytime we take a path, another path may close. And even if it ends up being exactly what we needed to do, there is still grief around it. And so when you talk about these weird emotions and this weird guilt, I'm like, I wonder if part of it is even just that grief of like, this may well be the right decision for you in your life, and it may also still have losses and sadness and feelings that come up. And so, again, being able to acknowledge it, just like for me, if I don't have grandkids, I will be sad, but it isn't my decision. And I love my kids and we will, whatever happens, we will make it through and we will be good. And, thinking about, I love travel too. And I mean, right now I'm so tied down by my dog and, just life and work. And so to think about being able to have freedom to just go, like, that would be really lovely, right? And so thinking about some of those possibilities. So, yeah, just the grief of roads not taken, I think, is a really real thing.
Yeah, and I think just like acknowledging those little griefs too, because I think a lot of times we like talk about grief in the big sense, like loss, are also like little losses, you know?
Yeah.
Because also like, I mean, in the context of kids, like there's also tons of people that maybe like thought they would have kids but can't have
Yeah.
kids, or like, you know, in the case for me, I mean, who knows? Like maybe I think I don't want kids and then I don't have them, but maybe it's going to hit me when I'm like kind of past the point of where I could have
Yeah.
biological kids. And then I'm
Right.
like, "Oh, I didn't do it."
Yeah.
But then obviously, like you could adopt if you really wanted
Yeah.
to. There's all just like these various things. Again, it's coming back to that uncertainty. Like you might think one thing and then follow that path. And then it might hit you one day that now I feel like I do want this thing. And so again,
Yeah.
it's kind of that like such human thing, right? That like you have to just make the choices that are best at the time and like who really knows how it's all going to unfold, right? Like that's
Yeah.
the kind of the
Yeah.
scariness of life, I guess, is like,
Yeah.
yeah, there is so many of those little uncertainties into the human experience.
I think one of the kind of phrases that I've carried with me over the years that I feel has really helped with processing some of that has been around like decision making and just the uncertainty. Because, how do you move forward when you don't know what the outcome is going to be? How do you make a decision? And, there have been times in my life where I felt like I need to make the perfect decision. And it's like, how do you make the perfect decision when you cannot see the future? You can't. And so coming to this place of, I am just going to make the decision as best I can and then move forward. And sometimes I find in my work with people as well, people really beat themselves up because as they move forward, it doesn't always turn out the way they thought it would. And then they look back and say, I made the wrong decision. Or it turns out really, really well, even better than it could have. And they say it was a perfect decision. And I remember having this moment where I was like, I don't think the outcome is actually tied to how good the decision was, because we can make the best possible decision and it might still not turn out well. And so, one of the ways of looking at it that I have found really helpful is to say, when I look back at what happened here and this decision that I made in the past, and I always say to people, if I said to you right now, hey, here's a decision you have to make. This is a really good decision and this is a terrible one. Which one do you want to make? Like, would you ever say, oh, I want to make the really bad one? You'd be like, well, of course I want to make the really good one. And so there's some freedom in recognizing that at the time, I absolutely made the best decision I could with everything that I knew in that moment, with who I was in that moment, with everything that I could foresee at that time, with all the skills that I had in that moment. Like maybe I've grown since then and I might make that decision differently now. But at the time, I genuinely made the best decision I could. And if it turned out well, excellent, let's celebrate. And if it didn't turn out the way that I thought it would, then I can just acknowledge that. Like, yeah, I made the best decision I could and it didn't quite turn out the way that I thought it would. And I find, around the guilt that comes with decision making, that can often be a really helpful piece to say, I know I did the best I could in the moment. It may not be what I wish it had been. And again, it's that acknowledging of the emotions, but I can still acknowledge that I did the best I could at that moment. Yeah.
Yeah. And I think like something that popped into my mind as I was reading Paul's part there is like going back to like the kids thing. Cause I like a little while ago had this kids conversation with somebody. And they were like saying how they were pretty sure they for sure didn't want kids.
Yeah.
And for some reason it just hit me. I can't even like describe to you like
Oh,
internal, like it was again this, I think it was like the closing off of
yeah.
possibilities just hit me like a ton of bricks, which was
Mm.
weird because like again, I've always been on the fence. And it was like this weird thing of feeling like that whole road had, like if I was going to go down this road, had potentially been closed off.
Yeah.
And for like a good chunk of time, like probably 6 months or so, like I could not pinpoint why that felt so uncomfortable. And I
Mm.
think it was the like closing off of
Yeah.
possibilities,
Yeah.
which again is, yeah, kind of silly because, like Paul also says, like actuality is never possibility realized. Okay, like, I mean, who even knows if I could have kids, right?
Right.
Like there's all these things mixed into that like one choice. And I think we always think, well, like, yeah, what if we choose that? And then later down the road, we want to then choose something else. And we always just think that we're like locked in, or like if we choose this thing, or like if we choose this person, that like
Mm.
it's all going to work out and it's all going to go perfectly. And we're going to be like perfectly happy and fulfilled with this one choice that we made like 15 years ago. And I think like it's again, the human experience is like nothing is ever guaranteed.
Right.
It's like also the kind of crappy thing to sit with
Yeah.
because we always like want that certainty that like we choose
Mhm.
a choice and it's all going to work out perfectly how we want it to.
Mhm. Mhm.
And sad to say,
Yeah, yeah. And just that willingness to acknowledge that that isn't the case and we we move forward and we move through it and we learn and we grow and recognizing that journey of, yeah, it's this process of becoming, right? Of continuing forward and in the moment it may not feel great and it may not feel like progress even at times. And yet, as we move forward, often when we look back, we see these moments in our journey and go, oh, wow, like there was something really rich that came out of that, even when it didn't feel like it. And I think for me, that's always the hope and the piece that I do hang on to, like when I am in the midst of something really overwhelming and I cannot see a way out of it, and everything around me feels unsettled, just holding on to that hope that I know I've gone through times like this in the past, and I know that I have come through them. And I've actually, again, lived life fully, even though in that moment I may not feel like I can. And I find too, sometimes, for the most part, I've been able to hold that, but there have been some seasons where holding that has been really hard. And I remember a good friend of mine coming alongside in one of those seasons and saying, like, Heidi, I see what you are going through. And it had been like three massive things that had hit us, one after the other after the other. And she said, I see what you're going through and I wish I could take it away. I know I can't. And I don't know how you're going to get through it, but I know you will because I have gone through seasons like this in my life. And she shared a few of her own stories and said, I didn't know at the time how I would ever move through them. And yet life did continue and things did shift eventually. And, I think of Maya Angelou's quote, and I'm terrible at quoting, so I apologize in advance if I get it wrong, but I think it's something like every storm cloud runs out of rain eventually. And just that sense of there is always a way through, even when we don't see it. And in hindsight, we often see more of the possibility that has been actualized rather than the parts that when we're in the midst of it we feel a lot of the grief and the parts that aren't happening. And so that for me has always been kind of the glimmer that I hold on to, is that sense of, like you said, I know I will get through it somehow even when I don't exactly know what that is. So I know you had a practice that you were going to walk us through, and I'm wondering if this might be a really good time to move into that. And then I realize we're probably at time, and we could probably keep going on this maybe next time. So if again, I'll just say before we'll maybe end with a practice. So thank you everyone who has tuned in, and I'm going to invite you if there's anything that you're thinking this would be really great for a future conversation, private message one of the two of us or both of us. We'd love to have your input and we're always open to topic ideas. And I'm going to assume, Courtney, that we'll be doing this again because we always do. And yeah, thank you, Courtney, for being here. And I will let you finish us off with the practice and then we'll we'll end the live there.
That's perfect. I know, because I was also just thinking that too. I was like, oh my gosh, like how has that already flown by a little
Oh,
time? We're just like, and I'm like, I feel like we could go on forever.
yes,
Yeah, I definitely feel like this could be a part two or something. Uh,
yes.
and yeah, so if anyone has any like further questions, but I will dive into a little practice because I thought it would be an interesting thing for all of us to experience. Is like, okay, we've talked about it today, but again, all of us are individuals. Like me and Heidi could tell you all the tools in the world and all the things that have popped up for us. But I think it's always, again, like learning our own individual systems and how we all work and kind of what pops up for us individually. So that's what we're going to dive into for this practice. So get comfortable. If you want to, you can also close your eyes for this exercise too, to kind of allow you to drop in to your body. And that's what we're going to be circling around today, is kind of figuring out for us, like, where is that uncertainty in our body and what does it feel like for all of us? Yeah, if you want, just get comfy, take a nice deep breath in all the way. And then I just want you to bring to mind something small in your life right now that you don't know the answers to yet. Doesn't have to be anything big, just something that brings up that feeling of, I don't know. And again, we're not trying to solve it right now. In fact, for the next couple of minutes, we are deliberately not going to. And so again, just kind of sitting with that I don't know. Just notice where it's sitting in your body. Does it feel like it's in your chest, in your abdomen, in your throat? Just taking a moment to notice where that is for you. And now I just want you to notice the sensation that you feel in that area. Is it feeling heavy? Are you feeling a bit nauseous? You feel your heart racing? Just kind of sitting with that sensation, whatever's coming up for you, and continuing to breathe. And just kind of noticing the support beneath you, noticing the air around your body, maybe noticing the sounds around you, whether that's just my voice or any other sounds. And just again, taking a nice deep belly breath, holding at the top for 4, 3, 2, 1, and then exhaling out the mouth for 6, 5, 4, 3, and again, nice deep breath in, holding at the top for 4, 3, exhaling out 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. The important thing to notice here is that uncertainty hasn't necessarily gone anywhere right now. In this moment, as you're sitting here, you're supported, you're breathing, and you don't necessarily have to solve whatever is going on, and you don't have to have a plan for what's next. Maybe if you want, just place a hand wherever you're feeling that sensation and just noticing that you can sit with that discomfort of not knowing and still be okay. Again, we aren't necessarily trying to force calm or convince ourselves that everything is going to work out. Or simply noticing that uncertainty can be here without it being the only thing that can exist. Again, just taking one more deep breath in through your nose and then all the way out. When you're ready, just bringing your attention back into the space and just noticing whatever might have come up for you. You feel like you want to share that in the chat. Heidi, if you feel like you want to share too, I can also share as well. I always love knowing kind of what popped up for people and what we're noticing.
Well, I noticed for me, it's always tension in the chest. So it was this tension in the chest, but I've had headaches over the last little while. And it's really interesting because as I was paying attention to the tension in the chest, I started having this twinging in my head. And it was like, okay. And yeah, like some of the uncertainty that I was focusing on is I'm like, okay, I think I'm beginning to see some of that connection. The other thing I noticed is, and this is what you said as we were going into the practice, like for each of us, this is going to feel different and we're going to notice different things. And as soon as you started asking me questions and I started identifying, it took everything within me just to sit here calmly because I'm literally holding my pen in my hand. Because I think at some point during the exercise, I grabbed my pen because what I really wanted to do was I wanted to open my eyes and I wanted to start writing. And it's like, okay, I can take that time when we're done here. I'm going to do that. But yeah, it was very interesting for me to notice again, like writing for me is such a part of my own therapy. And yeah, I didn't even know that I was holding my pen in my hand. So yeah.
Which is kind of interesting too, because I think that's like an interesting noticing piece
Yeah.
too. Because yes, like by all means, yeah, have your journal like ready so that things that do pop up during an experience you can write down after so that you don't forget them.
Yeah.
But I think that's like an interesting thing too, because I mean, I don't know if this is like for you, Heidi, but I noticed for me too when I used to do this, because again, like I think we're kind of taught to dismiss discomfort and we just want to
Mhm.
get rid of it. And so for me, that was like a big piece for meditation. And I've definitely had people say that to me too, as I'm like leading people through meditations, is they feel like
Yeah.
they can't meditate because a lot of people, I mean, there's different aspects to this, but a lot of people have said to me that they just like feel uncomfortable. They feel like they want to be doing something. They feel like I've had people say they feel like they just want to be writing.
Yeah.
And I think a lot of these times, again, it's like our nervous system wants to escape it. We don't
Mhm.
necessarily want to be sitting with those sensations
Mhm.
of, because again, I feel it in my chest too. And it's always like this heaviness in my chest. And we
Mhm.
don't necessarily want to sit with those uncomfortable parts. Right. And I think that's kind of a practice in itself. That's why, like, I love doing these kind of things because it's like learning what that is for you individually
Yeah.
and then just like sitting with it and kind of again like training your nervous system to sit with those uncomfortable pieces and like
Yeah.
again you're not necessarily trying to like escape it or get rid of it. You might notice a shift or you might not notice a shift right away,
Mhm.
but training your body to be like, okay, we can sit with this feeling and we don't necessarily have to escape it right away or feel a shift right
Mhm.
away.
Yeah. And Anne says it so beautifully. She says, the sensation of holding it consciously instead of trying to push it away, much more relaxing for me. So echoing that. It's interesting for me, the the desire to like write, it didn't feel like I don't like I want to push this away. I'm not comfortable with it. It felt very much like oh my goodness, I don't want to I want to be aware of it. Like for me, I think writing brings about awareness and also I struggle with memory. So writing helps me to remember. But yeah, I can see it might feel different for different people around that. So thank you so much for leading us through the practice. And we will definitely we're aiming for about every 6-ish weeks usually to do another one of these. So we will look at our schedules and we will post our next date as soon as we can. And thank you everyone for joining and for participating in the chat. It's been really lovely. And we look forward to seeing you again next time.
Yeah, thank you everyone. And thank you, Heidi. These are always so great. And yeah, all the participation in the chat today. I always love seeing that.
Agreed. Yeah. Have a wonderful weekend, everyone, and see you next time.